Yeah, it is day 2 of this restart at the Idaho State House. Reminder, it's a continuation of the longest legislative session in state history. Yeah, it's going to be tough to beat this, but the way things are going out there today, who knows? It could happen next year. Yesterday, we detailed how lawmakers were really setting up the pins, so to speak, for the rest of the week. Today, we got our first meaningful action of the restart, a collection of bills passed by the Idaho House. And Joe Paris joining us again, as usual, as today gets underway and continues as we speak. It's kind of where this thing could be. We want to kind of get an idea of what has been done and kind of where things stand right now.
Yeah, and today we're really getting some insight on what the final result of all this could be, Brian. And yeah, it's a fast pace as we speak right now. Lawmakers still working hard. We're going to get a live look at them in a few minutes. We'll check in on them. But let's go over some of the details of what the House accomplished just a short time ago. House Bill 417, the first thing that passed earlier, it aims to clarify an Idaho code that injuries stemming from employer-mandated vaccines are eligible for compensation under the Idaho workers' compensation laws. So this is for all vaccines, not just COVID. Democrat John Gannon made a very popular argument in favor.
An employer-mandated vaccination, not if you go out and you voluntarily want to get a flu shot, something like that. Only if the employee's telling you, you have to do this in order to work here. And if they're doing that, then by golly, I think our system ought to provide a fair compensation method. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So that bill passed 67-3, Brian, major bipartisan support, really saying that if an employer makes you get a vaccine of any kind and you get injured from that, you're eligible for compensation.
Makes sense?
Makes sense. Next up on the agenda there over on the House was House Bill 412. It was from Representative Bruce Skog, and it looks to prohibit certain acts of discrimination based on immunization status or the possession of immunity passports. Really, Representative Skog says it's based on legislation out of Montana, which seems to be successful according to him. And the bill would make it against the law for state and local government to withhold or deny any person local or government services, goods, facilities, access to health care or education, things of that nature. But importantly, too, it would also make it against the law to refuse employment or discriminate in any ways in employment based on vaccine status. Now, Brian, critics tell us that this is an overreach into private business and it complicates an already complicated process that is being taken on in the courts right now, again, as they address the Biden vaccine mandates. Representative Rubel had this to say on the big topic.
Business people, our owners and operators of businesses, have really been brought through the ringer, as have we all in the last year and a half, 2 years, as we've battled this pandemic. But I do not think we are doing the people of this state a favor by putting our businesses in a quandary where they have to choose between breaking state and breaking federal law. I think it presents a real bind for them and will lead them to confusion, expense, and litigation. So I think at this time, when we don't know where federal law is going to shake out, I don't think it's appropriate for us to be passing laws that will force our businesses to either break state law or break federal law. I just don't think that's fair to our business community.
And that bill passed 48-22, Brian, essentially on party lines with some Republicans voting no.
And if I may, they essentially added the words, basically, without when it comes to COVID.
Yeah, and that's one commentary on it.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
All right.
Interesting note, though, there are exceptions to what we just talked about for healthcare facilities and schools, so there are some carve-outs in there. Finally, House Bill 414 from Representative Mike Moyle. It adds to the Idaho Human Rights Act to prohibit the government, employers, or any entity, it says, from questioning or requesting additional information from an employee who claims a religious exemption to an otherwise required medical treatment, like a COVID vaccine. Now, the bill produced some very spirited debate. You could take Representative Barbara Ehart, for example. She gave a passionate debate about religious freedoms in our country.
I have constituents, even some sitting right up here, whose employers denied their continuation of employment, would not accept their religious exemptions, their personally held beliefs, and they no longer have a job, and they have children, and they have a car payment, and they have a home payment, and they don't know what they're going to do. And this is happening throughout all of Idaho. It's happening throughout America, but we can only do what we can do for Idaho.
The point was also made, Brian, on the House floor that religious exemptions with no questions allowed or any clarification, it may be actually diminishing the entire idea of a religious idea there, because For example, Brian, if you have a religious exemption, and this was the point that was made by lawmakers, not me to be clear, if you have an exemption that says you can't ask any questions about this, then what's the point of having an exemption? Because then anybody could say, well, I have an exemption on this, you can't ask me about it at all.
If I worship at the Church of Blue Suede Shoes and say that doesn't allow me, that's exactly what it does.
Yeah, and Representative Greg Cheney, for example, brought up a point that there are churches of marijuana, for example, in other places. So that's one thing that he says, you know, would you want to take that religious exemption without any questions, was the point he made. Also of note, real quickly, the House did pass House Bill 429 a very short time ago. It would basically allow for exemptions on masks and plexiglass and other COVID mitigation efforts in public schools. And the exemptions could be medical, religious, really any personal reasons at all. And Brian, any of those exemptions could not be denied.
That's the part that sticks out to me, is the personal reasons. So if you just don't want to wear a mask because you personally don't think that they work, or you just don't want to, well, you don't have to.
No questions asked?
No questions.
That one passed after a very long debate, 42 to 28. And you may ask, well, Brian, what are they doing right now? Are the lawmakers still working? Well, let's take a live look inside the Idaho State House. You can see the House Minority Leader, Alana Rubel. This is her live debating House Bill 421, another one of these bills that it's targeting the Biden vaccine mandate as well as business protocols here in the state of Idaho. You may be asking, well, what about the Senate? We've heard a lot about the House. Essentially, Brian, the Senate is waiting for the House to transmit all these bills over. They were supposed to start up again at 5 o'clock, and we were hoping to give everyone a live look at the Senate at 5, but they haven't started up again because waiting on the House.
Literally, last I looked, there were a couple senators in the chambers cooling their heels up on the desk, just kind of waiting for whatever happens in the House to come over there. And the thing that was brought up a couple times during this 429 debate about they're taking local control away from the local municipalities like school boards, school districts, that kind of stuff, and saying, nope, we're going to give exemptions. You cannot allow that.
Yeah, and a big conversation during the legislative session earlier in the year was giving power to local school districts.
Right, and so here they are kind of going at it from a different direction. All right, thank you very much, Joe. Lots more to keep track of, and we'll do that.
More tomorrow.